What's up guys, Gray here, welcome back. In today's video, we've got the long-awaited follow-up to my Voidlock build from earlier this season. If you didn't get a chance to check out that video, you might want to do so, as I'm going to assume you're aware of a few things from that build in this follow-up video. By the way, you guys absolutely blew me away with the support on that video. It remains the highest viewed video on my channel, which is absolutely insane to me. So a big thank you from me to you for the support on that one. And if you're new around here and you enjoy the content, leaving a like below is a free way to support the channel, and consider subscribing if you want to see some more content just like this. Now let's dive right into the build. I think you guys are going to enjoy this one because it not only improves upon the original formula from Middle Tree Void, but it also works with any of the Voidwalker trees depending on what sort of content you're going to be heading into. Now just to recap the original build a little bit, it was all based around the buffs that Middle Tree Voidwalker got at the beginning of the season. There were some huge damage increases to Handheld Supernova and the Nova Warp Super, and there were a bunch of new mods and weapons that allowed us to take that to a really high level and give us almost constant uptime on Handheld Supernova for big damage and just a ton of synergy with all of the new Elemental Well mods. Now fast forward to today, and with the 30th anniversary update, we got access to some really interesting new weapon rolls, and Middle Tree saw even more buffs for PvE. Handheld Supernova got another 30% damage increase versus bosses and champions, which is seriously nice. It really does make a difference, and the range was increased by 2 meters. The Dark Matter passive was changed to scale with enemy type, meaning you get more out of it based on the tier of enemy you're defeating. So like a red bar or an orange bar, you're going to get more of that ability regen depending on what type of enemy you're defeating. And finally, Nova Warp saw that same 30% damage increase against bosses and champs as well. Now there was also some changes to the Contraverse Hold exotic, which is a really common pairing for Middle Tree Void. I got some comments asking what I thought of the changes, but honestly, I think it's worse off than it used to be, but we're going to touch on that a little bit later in the video. Now back in the original video, I talked about a mod that was coming to the game but just wasn't out yet. I knew it was going to improve the build, but I really underestimated just how much of a difference it would make. That mod is Bountiful Wells. This is a really interesting one. It states elemental well mods that cause you to spawn an elemental well can now stack, spawning additional wells for each copy of the mod that you have equipped. It's a bit to unpack, but it's probably best explained with an example. Let's take the mod Elemental Ordnance, which is a staple from that original build. This mod creates an elemental well that matches our subclass whenever we defeat a target with a grenade. Now normally, of course, this would only create one elemental well, but with Bountiful Wells, we can use multiple copies of Elemental Ordnance in our build to get multiple wells from each grenade kill, which is a massive improvement to the build, and it actually ends up working even better than I expected. For example, we are now using 2 copies of Elemental Ordnance in this build. So you would think, naturally, that you would get 2 elemental wells for each grenade kill, but we actually end up getting 3 because we get 1 from each copy of Elemental Ordnance, and then Bountiful Wells kicks in and generates a 3rd elemental well. That mod allows the well mods to stack, and it generates an extra well for every copy of a mod past 1. Now I know that's a mouthful and it's pretty complicated. The TLDR is that Bountiful Wells does more than you might think at first glance. That alone improves the fluidity of the build a ton, and so our remaining mod slots get pretty freed up to add some extra synergy for our weapons. We're going to be using Elemental Armaments, which will generate wells on void weapon kills since it matches our subclass. And then we will also take Font of Might, which will give us a really nice damage boost on all of our void weapons every time we pick up a well. You can have it up almost constantly. The great thing about it all is that every weapon in our loadout is void. Previously, we were using some of the new weapons from the Prophecy Dungeon. If you remember from that video, Last Breath and Judgment can both roll with Osmosis, Demolitionist. making them very strong pairings for this build. They can be converted to void damage with Osmosis, synergizing with all of the mods, and Demolitionist is there to give us our grenade energy back constantly. But with the changes to our mod setup and using Bountiful Wells, Demolitionist isn't as necessary anymore, and there's sort of a perfect exotic to take its place. A ton of you already know it, and I'm of course talking about the Traveler's Chosen. This sidearm is the ability regen GOAT. Each kill gives you a stacking buff up to 10 times, and you can cash in those stacks by holding reload to get a huge amount of your ability energy back on everything. But the catalyst is where it gets next level. It gives Traveler's Chosen the Osmosis perk, as well as making the weapon full auto. So not only is it easier to use by having full auto, but Osmosis seriously makes it incredible. It will now deal void damage after a grenade throw, synergizing with all of our mods and our exotic armor of choice, Verity's Brow, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. The cherry on top of all of that is that Font of Might will now also increase the damage output of Traveler's Chosen and all of the other weapons in our loadout as well. Now, originally we were using the Null Composure Fusion Rifle for our special weapon. It paired perfectly with the old build, worked with all of the mods, and it also had the unique perk of Reservoir Burst for some great ad control and additional well generation. It also, of course, allows us to use the seasonal mod, Particle Deconstruction. But with the Dawning event in Destiny 2 that's been going on for the last month, we got an even better version of this weapon. It does take some RNG, but Glacioclasm has an even better combination of perks. You can see the one I have here. I got incredibly lucky, and I got the 6 out of 5 God roll on this thing. Glacioclasm gets the one and only perk combination of either Slide Shot Reservoir Burst or Subsistence Reservoir Burst. Both of these are amazing, and if you didn't catch it, the gun is going to be constantly reloading itself, which gives us Reservoir Burst back because it only procs on the first shot of the magazine. So you can get a kill, slide to reload, get a kill, and you'll have Reservoir Burst every single time. If you do the Dawning quests, you can unlock a perk that allows you to get multiple perk rolls on the weapon. So hopefully you'll get lucky and get a roll like this that has both Subsistence and Slide Shot, but you'll at least have an extra chance of at least getting one of them. If you haven't already got this, I highly recommend you try to get it before the Dawning goes away. And finally, in our heavy slot, rounding out all of the Void synergy, we're going to be using Threaded Needle. This is a linear fusion from Season of the Chosen. You can still go and farm it with Umbral Engrams in the Helm, and I don't even have a perfect roll on this, but it works great with the build and gives us some nice single target damage when we need it. You could use really any Void weapon here, but the linear fusions are going to work really good with all of the seasonal mods that are available right now. Now let's talk about the exotic armor. As I mentioned earlier in the video, Contraverse Hold got some changes with the 30th anniversary pack, but I think it's worse in my opinion. Previously, after using your charged grenade, you would get an ability regen buff that would return grenade energy. It had a random duration that could be anywhere from 1 to 4 seconds, and sometimes you would get lucky and you'd get that long duration. It would give you your grenade back super fast, but ultimately it ends up being really inconsistent. And even Bungie acknowledges that. They say here the average duration was only 1.35 seconds, so you really weren't getting the most out of it very often. Now, after the changes they made, the buff will always last for 1.75 seconds, which is at least more consistent, but we're still giving up a ton by using this exotic. Namely, we don't get any form of damage boost to our handheld supernova or our charged grenade, which we do get with something like Verity's Brow. We would also be giving up our exotic slot for something we pretty much have covered with the mods we're already running, and the only thing you would really be getting out of Contraverse is the damage reduction while holding your charged grenade. It's so incredibly niche, I really can't recommend using this to fill your exotic slot. I still prefer Verity's Brow for this build. Not only does it do Contraverse's job by giving us tons of free grenade energy, but it also increases the damage of our grenades, which is very necessary for taking this build into any form of difficult PvE content. Each weapon final blow that matches our subclass will give us a stack of death throws. Each stack gives us grenade energy back, and it increases our grenade damage. it stacks up to 5 times and ends up tripling the damage of handheld Supernova. It takes it from 10,000 damage to 30,000 damage. It's very noticeable if you don't have the buff going. It also helps out your fire team. Every time you throw a grenade when you have the buff active, it's going to give your allies increased grenade regen. It's a very packed exotic and is still one of the best choices for Warlock PvE in general. So to put it all together, the major improvements here are from Traveler's Chosen and the usage of the new Bountiful Wells mod. Traveler's Chosen gives us amazing synergy with Osmosis from the Catalyst, but it also really allows us to fill in any potential gaps. Say you died at an awkward time and now you don't have your grenade, you don't have any perks or buffs rolling. Traveler's Chosen is going to ensure that you can always get your abilities back even in those awkward situations. Bountiful Wells makes our Elemental Well mods even stronger and really allows us to be a full-on grenade build with just amazing uptime on our strongest ability. Now, a couple of things worth mentioning. You, of course, want to be using Particle Deconstruction as it is the big debuff mod of the season and goes hand in hand with our fusion rifles here. And you can also use Unstoppable Fusion Rifle or Unstoppable Sidearm for those champions if needed. As I said at the beginning of the video, you can also use this with any of the Void Warlock trees as well. It's very strong on top tree Void with those overcharged grenades and the Slova Bomb. And on bottom tree with Devour, it may not be quite as strong because you sort of consume your grenade instead of actually using it. You can still have really good ability uptime while keeping Devour going all the time. And if you're truly in need of big boss damage while farming bosses and dungeons or anything like that, you can swap Traveler's Chosen out for another kinetic Osmosis weapon and use Sleeper Simulant in the heavy slot for really big single target damage if you need it. Now, the final thing I'll mention here is that you want to make sure you're as close to 100 discipline as possible. That's going to give you the shortest grenade cooldown, and make sure that you're using the Axion Bolt grenade. After the 30th anniversary update, every grenade has a different cooldown now, and Axion Bolt has the shortest of the 3, so make sure you're using that one so you have the shortest possible cooldown. Now finally, let's take a look at the full updated list of combat mods for the build. You're going to need 1 Bountiful Wells, 2 Elemental Ordnance, 1 Elemental Armaments, 1 Font of Might, 1 Particle Deconstruction, and 1 Unstoppable Fusion Rifle or Unstoppable Sidearm if needed. All of this will be combined with Verity's Brow and Traveler's Chosen for our grenade damage buff and constant ability regen. And that's going to be the updated build, guys. It's probably one of my favorite builds I've ever put together just because of all of the insane synergy. It might not be something you take into a Grandmaster Nightfall, but it's a ton of fun. And I'm kind of laughing because I have a feeling I'm going to be doing this again once Witch Queen drops and we get that massive Void subclass overhaul. Who knows what's going to be possible then. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed the build. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like below for me and smash that subscribe button and let me know what ideas you guys are playing with and if you want me to make a video on them. Feel free to come join our community Discord to talk with other like-minded Destiny gamers as well. There's a link in the description. Would love to have you over there. Thanks again, and I'll catch you in the next one.